Good evening. My name's Chris Pareja, and you're joining us for The Right Side, the show where we talk about today's issues and controversies in a conservative, admittedly conservative, perspective. Tonight we're going to go right into controversy, and we're going to talk about illegal immigration and border control and border patrol. We will be talking with our guest this evening, Don Barich, as well as Steve Kemp. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us this evening.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.
So, right off the bat, we want to get to know a little bit more about each of you. So tell me a little bit about yourselves and how the illegal immigration, border control issues first showed up on your radar screen. We'll start with Steve. Steve?
Okay, I guess it was about 2007, and what had happened, there was a bill by Congressman Sensenbrenner who was trying to crack down on illegal immigration, and in May of 2007, the illegal alien or immigrant proponents essentially wanted to fight that bill, and they showed up on the streets on May Day, May 1st. And they were all over California and the country flying, well, actually a lot of Mexican flags and stuff, and really ticked a lot of people off seeing that happen just in massive groups. And so that's pretty much, I had been following illegal immigration for years and years and years, but I'd been too busy to do anything about it, and that just pushed me right over the edge seeing that happen. So that's when I started getting involved.
So seeing how flagrant it was and how out in the open it was, or that it could be, to break the law.
In your face, yeah.
Okay, great. Don, how about you?
I'm a lot like Steve, Chris, in that, I followed the issue for quite a while, but I think that the tipping point for me was the recent controversy with the San Jose Police Department and their collaboration with ICE. And they had brought in, and that they collaborated with ICE because of the budget cutbacks and the reduction in the force to help them with the gang problem. And the gang problem is pretty prevalent in the San Jose area. But the immigrant advocate groups protested in their usual manner, lots of bullhorns, lots of signs down at the police department. Nobody's getting deported. We don't care what you've done, who you've killed, who you sold drugs to, nobody's getting deported. Well, that just didn't seem right to me. I know that there's a lot of people who come here to work hard, but it's really the violent ones that are a menace to our society that we need to focus on. And I got involved with the San Jose Police Department with the ICE issue, and that's what really got me to be an activist in terms of illegal immigration.
Okay. So to be clear, though, we hear a lot in California, or even on a national level, that this is an anti-Mexican or anti-South American kind of rhetoric that's coming out of the two of you racists. I mean, you guys, first of all, we've talked in the past, you guys aren't anti-immigrant as a whole.
No.
You just want to make sure that people are coming through the front door as opposed to the back, the side, the window, and every other direction.
Well, one of the arguments you often hear from the groups is that our immigration system is broken. Well, maybe, but we legally allow over 1 million people a year to come to this country. Now, we do want to bring immigrants in. It adds to our culture and the diversity of our country, but we have a process for that, and everybody should be following the rules, because it's not fair to the people who do follow the rules for other people just to come across and then have children here and then start to get the benefits that everybody else has worked so hard to provide for their fellow citizens.
And it's much bigger of an issue than we give a lot of attention to the southern border, but there's more to it than that. I've been known to say it doesn't matter if it's the southern border, the northern border, the airports, the seaports. We need to make sure that we're secure. There are a lot of ramifications to allowing anyone to come in. There are health issues, there are financial issues, there are education issues. It goes across the board. Steve, what do you see as some of the ramifications for just allowing people willy-nilly to walk across without even figuring out who's coming into the country?
Well, there's a lot. You don't know the background of the people coming in. And as far as society, you have a lot. Usually, a lot of the people who are coming in from the southern border are low education, and they're hardworking folks, of course. But you've got to figure that every illegal immigrant that comes into the country is taking a job away from an American. I think it's 3 to 5% of the illegals actually work in the fields. The rest of them go out and do construction work, body shop work, restaurants, housekeeping services, and all that sort of thing. And, the big argument is, they're doing jobs that Americans don't want to do. Well, you know what? I've never found a job that I wouldn't do. And I know a lot of people say the same thing, especially in a bad economy. But they tend to bring the wage levels down of all the people who are here who have been working for years, like the carpenters. I mean, they were making like $40 an hour plus 20 years ago, and now their wages are steadily declining, have been, because people are coming in and taking the jobs.
Well, it's interesting. You bring up the declining wages. One of the people that's often used in revisionist history to stand up for the plight of the immigrant, or specifically the illegal immigrant, would be Cesar Chavez,
right,
who actually was known for beating illegal immigrants because they drove down the wages for the people that he was trying to organize to work in the fields and make things happen.
Yeah, that's the truth, but it's a history, and as you say, revisionists who look at it another way. It's like Cesar Chavez is their hero, and was there, but actually it was the other way around. You're absolutely correct.
Right, and what's interesting though is it's not just the Hispanic community. There are pockets where there are high densities of Asian or Middle Eastern illegal immigrants, and even when we talk about the southern border, it's known globally as being very porous, and so we're finding more and more copies of the Quran or prayer rugs in the desert as well, and we're hearing that Hezbollah is actually training terrorists to come in, pick up Hispanic mannerisms, and come through the southern border because it's very unlikely that anyone will stop them. Yeah. And so what kind of ramifications are you seeing, Don, as being in place, the jobs? Are there other issues?
Well, Steve hit on a couple of good points. I mean, the people who are coming across are really unknown entities, as opposed to people who go through the system. You know, they're checked, they're vetted, they're health checked, just like in the old days when, I'm a second-generation American. My grandparents went through Ellis Island. Mm-hmm. But it's all about cheap labor is really what people are looking for. And there's no such thing as cheap labor, because even though these people are, in fact, hardworking people, they're working for they're going to take somebody's identity to get a job, because you're in theory not supposed to hire somebody who's here illegally. Mm-hmm. But they're only going to be making, $7, $8, $9 an hour. And if they have 2 to 4 kids, they're going to be qualifying for an earned income credit. They're going to be subsidized in their housing. They're going to be getting food assistance and other social assistance. So it really puts a strain on our system, which is already strained at the federal, county, and local level, and state level. So those are some of the things that illegal immigration brings to that. So if there was a way to, in the past, we used to bring people in, depending on our country's ability to absorb them, because of our economic activity. We would bring people in because we needed the labor. And so immigration, I think, needs to ebb and flow based on our economy. When things are good and good workers are hard to find, then we should allow more people into the country. Times now where the unemployment rate is not 8.3%, it's really in the 13-14% range.
And higher.
We need to kind of back down on the immigration. And then anybody who comes in here illegally, the argument is, well, they pay taxes, Well, maybe they pay sales tax, but they're not paying income tax, and they're not paying Social Security tax. And in 2006 alone, over $65 billion was sent back to countries of origin by people who came here to work. Now, I'm not saying that they're bad people because of that, because to be honest with you, a lot of us would do the same thing. But as a sovereign country, we have a right to our security and our economic prosperity as much as anybody else does.
Mm-hmm. But we also haven't touched on the fact that there's a lot of violence and violent crime that comes across as well, and that, for example, we hear the stats of Phoenix, Arizona being the kidnapping capital of the country, second in the world only to Mexico City, and it's the same people that are doing it. It's the Mexican drug cartels.
Right.
Just in recent weeks, we're hearing about caravans of drug mules, which are illegal immigrants with drugs strapped to their backs or their persons, being led in the front by a guy with a machine gun and in the back by a guy with a machine gun. And we've got all the human trafficking and everything else. Yeah. What's not acknowledged is a lot of times this illegal immigration actually has a larger impact on the legal immigrant community. Absolutely. Because these people live in and amongst them.
Absolutely. I think it's important. I mean, the people who come here are hardworking individuals, and they want to just better their lives. And it's hard to fault people for that. But again, we do have a rule of law. It's the violent ones that we really should be focusing on primarily. And those are the ones that you say are running drugs. Do you know that 30% of the federal inmate population are illegal aliens? We spend $3 million a day to incarcerate illegal prisoners. And that's money that could go to schools, health care for the poor or the elderly, food assistance programs for citizens or legal immigrants. And that's a lot of money to be spending on violent people.
Well, and additionally, the liberal argument is always, well, if we spent more on schools and less on prisons, then we wouldn't have a problem. But if the numbers are as high as you say, 30% of the population wouldn't have been helped by more spending on the schools.
Right. That's right. At the federal level, 30% of the inmates are illegal aliens. So you wonder, why are they in our prison system? Why are not we sending those people back and spending that money on more worthwhile causes?
Okay.
Yeah. And another add-on to that, too, is that anytime that you have essentially poor people that are living in poor neighborhoods, you're going to breed crime because the kids are going to be out on the streets looking for things to do. And that's where it happens. There's a lot of drugs and crime and things like that, and they start joining gangs. And as a result, you have a lot of gangs that are springing up everywhere. And the other part about that, too, is the first-generation immigrants, illegal or otherwise, are going to come here and they're going to work hard. That's why they came here. They want to make a life or whatever it is. They're going to work hard and do better for their family. And in doing so, a lot of times they don't get their esteem is knocked down or whatever because they're scrubbing toilets, whatever it might be. And their kids see that, and their kids say, "That's not for me. I'm not going to do what my parents are doing. I'm not going to do that. Whatever it's going to take to get me out, if it's going to be selling drugs, whatever." Very few kids are really going to make it out of that environment into a higher education system. I mean, some do, but I mean, this has been going on for a long time. And, not with just the illegal population, but that's just how poor neighborhoods work.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about, would you consider yourselves both political activists or immigration activists, anti-illegal immigration activists, and what kinds of activities do you normally participate in to help draw attention?
Well, I wouldn't say I was anti-illegal immigration. It's more pro-rule of law is the way that I like to look at it. We have a system for bringing people into this country. Right. And you make a good point. The people who come here illegally are really doing great harm to the people who come here legally, because of the conceptions that they form in people's minds, whether those are right or wrong. It's not what is, it's what people think. So people have a bad image of immigrants in general, and that's not right. So I like to think of it more as pro-rule of law. We have rules that need to be followed. I get involved there are a lot of immigrant advocate groups that do a lot of good work on teaching English, getting people registered to vote, but they also exist to advocate for the illegals. Again, they don't want to send anybody back, regardless of what crimes you may have committed. So I think we need to focus on those, and I go to city council meetings and county meetings to kind of be the balanced voice against the advocate groups.
Okay. Steve?
Well, I would say similarly, with the Golden Gate Minutemen, what we do is we essentially are around to educate the public, more or less. We have some demonstrations and that sort of thing. My particular job with the Golden Gate Minutemen, more than anything else, and with other activist sorts of things, I'm also a Tea Party member, I'm a professional videographer. Video is my business, and what I do is I bring that to the mix. So I cover things and put it up on YouTube for other people to see. And so if I'm in a meeting or something and something gets said, if the camera isn't there, it really didn't happen in a way. But if the camera is there and I capture it, which I usually do, and put it up on the web, then it can be seen. And that includes going out to May Day protests and other sorts of things where people are very vile towards us. I mean, the first thing they call us, just because essentially we want the rule of law, and what's wrong with that, and we see what's happening to our cities, tearing everything down. The first thing we're some kind of a white supremacist or racist. I mean, that's the easiest thing, and flipping us off and everything like that, when we're just trying to do what's right for our country.
Well, and you have a lot of immigrants and second-generation immigrants in the Golden Gate Minutemen as well.
That's
and
correct.
So they're calling Hispanics racist, or they're calling people from the from Eastern Europe who've come here and seen a move toward a more totalitarian type of government. They're all racists as well, for speaking truth.
And it wouldn't matter. I mean, if I'm second generation here, and it wouldn't matter if it was people that came from my country of origin coming over here, which they do. I mean, that's also happening. I mean, the southern border, I think, is the most visible for whatever reason, especially here in the San Francisco Bay Area and California in general. The other people just seem to, I guess they're less out there on the streets where I don't know what it is, but you don't see them as much. So the focus becomes the southern border. But it's as you said before, the illegal immigration is across the board, and people are overstaying their visas and everything.
Yeah, and that's another major thing. Sometimes people aren't coming across maliciously. Sometimes they overstay their allotted time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very complex issue, generally. And so we'll get to solutions in just a minute, but just out of curiosity, how do you feel about and I have a feeling I know the answer to this question already, but how do you feel about the fact that the federal government is refusing to enforce immigration law and will even go as far as suing states who try to enforce immigration law for themselves?
Well, I think you hit the nail right on the head with that, because the illegal immigrant is really not the problem. They're people just like you and me and everybody else who want to better their lives. The problem is the lack of will on the federal government to secure our border. Because what happens is, well, this person's getting deported, it's going to break up the family. We're all bad people because we want to send this person back. Well, the truth of the matter is they shouldn't be here in the first place if our border was secure. So if they went through the system and came here legally, we wouldn't be breaking up a family, or supposedly breaking up a family. So I think the number one problem is with the federal government and then politicians who just don't have the willpower to give their own citizens a sovereign and safe country.
I got to tell you, Chris, I don't get it. I mean, I just don't get it. It's against the law, and most of the citizenry in the United States is against illegal immigration. Mm-hmm. The drain on society, financially, schools, healthcare, you name it. I mean, it just pulls everything down. Legal immigrants are fine. You know, that's what we're built on, legal immigration. That's cool. But illegal immigration, just letting people flow on in here, and then when they're here, just, doling out benefits and whatnot, then they have a baby. That baby's an American citizen. That law needs to be changed. It's not, nobody's even, people talk about it, and they start, saying, oh, you can't change that, Well, that was a law that was written for, the children of slaves way back when. Times are a little bit different now.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just, it tears the foundation down.
Well, and it's interesting that you brought up that across the spectrum, people on the quote-unquote left and on the right both get frustrated by the immigration situation, including the immigrants who waited in line and are actually discriminated against because they're associated with a group of lawbreakers, and even though they have nothing to do with it, they still get penalized along with the rest.
And then the lack of assimilation, too. I mean, it's the other language, a lot of Spanish being spoken and that sort of thing. And there seems to be a lack of will in the government to get people on the same page with English as one language throughout the country so we can have better communication. Just real quick, that is why English is the language of air traffic control around the world, because it can be understood. They don't want planes crashing into each other. I mean, so if everybody's speaking the same language, at least we have a chance of communicating properly.
Yeah. We have about a minute left for each of you, so just solve the world in a minute.
Well, I wish I could, Chris, but that I think what Steve says about the lack of assimilation is really what you see with the new crop of people that may come here illegally. In generations past, I mean, again, I'm second generation. My grandparents came here. They learned English, and they spoke English. It was heavily accented, but they spoke English because, you know what, they said, this is our country. We're not from there. We are now Americans, and Americans speak English. And they went into the whole baseball and hamburger and hot dog cultural values. Sure, you can respect your history, your cultural history, and keep that in your immediate family or your community group. But the way that we do things here, we have an American way of doing things. And language is a big part of what keeps us together as a community. And I think with all the new thing now is the ballots are going to be printed in 9 different languages, which is unusual because you have to be able to speak English to become a citizen.
Yes.
So that's just another case of wasted money that could go to schools, healthcare.
Yes.
Pick a cause.
It's a subject that's near and dear to my heart for lots of reasons. So, Steve, solve the world's problems in a minute.
Okay, in a minute. Well, pertaining to illegal immigration, I mean, there's tons of problems out there. That's why I'm with the Tea Party as well. But I would say what we need to do before we even start thinking about amnesty, which they continually want to bring around, we need to seal the borders. I mean, you need to stop the flood before you figure out how you're going to dry things off, right, essentially. So we need to seal the borders, and it wouldn't be that hard. I mean, they're talking about building the walls. It's all this hard thing to do. Really, send some troops down there, with arms. and they don't have to shoot people. I mean, that's not what it's about, unless, you know, somebody starts shooting at them or something. But you've got to control the borders, and you also have to control other people, and you have to go after people who are essentially overstaying visas and whatever. I mean, it's a multi-tiered sort of a thing. It's got to be attacked from all different angles before there's amnesty, because I know I and a lot of people like me would maybe consider other solutions to the problem, but first you got to seal those borders.
Okay. Well, thank you very much both for joining us and sharing a little bit of your passion. At this point, we do have to take a break for a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum.
Say, well, I say I'm a constitutional law attorney. And they say, oh, really? What kind of constitutional law attorney? I say, well, I'm the true kind. The kind of believe that the Constitution is what the Constitution says and what it was intended to say. Anything beyond that is tyranny and should not be allowed.
So it's come to this, my friends. You're ready the second American Revolution against a ruling class that simply lectures but does not listen or defend the American people. It is government versus the people. Am I right? Look at the Electoral College example, right? A leftist popular challenge to states' rights. You think the founders weren't brilliant people? Did they not know what they were doing by carefully calibrating to get the small states and the big states to come together? Why does Wyoming get 2 senators in California? Actually, I'd rather have Wyoming's 2 senators.
Welcome back to the right side. I'm now joined by Howard Myers, our guest. He's the president of the Conservative Forum, and as you just saw in the commercial, an underwriter of the right side. Howard, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And so tell us a little bit, in about 2 minutes or less,
Okay.
What's the Conservative Forum all about and who's coming next?
Okay, the video I think summed it up fairly well. This is on our website and it introduces who we are. We're a group of conservative people that get together. We've been growing in the last 8 years from about 20 people to almost 600 members. We have meetings once a month. It's the first Tuesday of the month. The doors open at 6:15. Program starts right at 7 o'clock. We have speakers that draw quite a crowd. Last month we had 300 people at our Hillsdale event with Dr. Gary Wolfram. The next couple of months we have coming up Mark Meckler, one of the co-founders of the Tea Party Patriots. Following that is Brian Sussman, and he'll have a new book out that he'll be signing. Following that is Dave Horowitz. So we have some really good people. We've had some excellent people. You saw from the video some of the people we've had in the past. And we have another great lineup this year that we're working on. And we meet at 432 Stearland Road. This is in Mountain View at the IFES Portuguese Hall. And it's really a great time. People come out and meet like-minded people.
Well, we appreciate your underwriting the show, and we appreciate all you do to spread the conservative message. Thanks, Howard.
Yep.
And in closing, we're going to show a little bit of Steve Kemp's work. He'd mentioned he's a videographer. This is a video he took of my congressman and his feelings on border security.
Okay, I want to know why the federal government is not doing anything or a lot more to seal our borders in this country so that we're a solvent country again.
Well, we can't get enough Minutemen armed. We'd like to get all the Minutemen armed so that they could stop shooting people here.
It's not our job. We're just citizens. The United States government constitutionally protect us.
Well,
Why
so
are
say
you
we'll try and get you some more arms and get you down there to.
We don't want to go down there. We want to have lives, of normal lives. We pay taxes, and we pay to have the government take care of our borders.
Is that all?
Is that all what?
The government should do?
Well, that's one of the things the government is supposed to do. That's what the federal government is there for. They said they were going to do it, and they're not doing it. I'm asking what are you guys doing?
No, tell me. I mean, I'm not the government.
I would send about 25,000 troops down there for one thing, and I would build a wall down there to make so vehicles cannot pass.
How high and how long would that wall be?
As high and as long as it takes.
Well, if you don't want to shoot the people coming over, then I'll go down and we'll go and start a ladder company. But I got to know how high that wall is. And I'll sell a whole lot of ladders for people who want to come.
Congressman, can I ask you a question?
You've asked one already. Go ahead.
This is a very serious matter, and you're sitting there making fun of it.
No, I don't have to make fun of you, sir. You do a fine job all by yourself.
And so as you can see, getting active politically and actually going to have your voice heard, a great place to do it is at your local town hall meetings. If your representatives come to town, it's a good place to get to know how they feel about issues that are important to you and how much respect they will take back to Washington to have your voice heard there. Normally we end on a happy note. That's not such a happy thing, but it is serious, so get involved. You've been joining us this evening on The Right Side, and we hope you'll come back and join us again soon. Thanks.